Hello, 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 fellow humans and eavesdropping bots. I'm Chris Nolan.
Hey guys, I'm Mike Schindler. I am one of the instructors at Captain Kirk University. I love this, Chris. Captain Kirk University. This is where we teach advanced courses in boldly going into the future.
We got to open that pretty soon here. So, everybody, welcome back to the Rise of Humanness show, where we explore what it means to stay human in an increasingly automated, uncertain world.
And guys, be sure that you hit that subscribe button, share with your friends. We're not very picky about who you share
Strangers, people you don't know, we're not picky. Right.
And together, we're going to show you how to stay absolutely powerful,
Stay human.
and rise and thrive in the age of AI.
Yes. And even show you how to beat the bots. Well, let's rise.
The rise of humanness in the age of AI. It's a podcast with Chris and Mike. The rise of humanness in the age of AI.
Michael Platt, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you guys?
Doing great. Chris's right-hand man. Chris makes me do the laundry, and he,
A lot of dirty laundry for Mike. Where are you? Are you in Pennsylvania now, or?
I am. I'm in my med school office, which the only hitch here is that, and this almost seems to never fail. As soon as I have to use audio, there's like construction guys outside.
Yeah, it's usually for me, it's my gardeners,
Yeah.
the
Well,
blowers.
like, come on, stop with the beeping. But so hopefully the audio is okay.
Chair in the background reminds me of all my therapy group.
There. Yeah.
I'll be in 10 minutes.
Did it work?
Oh, yeah, I had teams where,
That's funny.
If you're an Annie Hall fan, I don't know if you're a Woody Allen fan.
Yeah, well, I'm a fan. Yes. So yeah, Eddie Hall.
We can be honest here. I mean, I'm a super fan.
Yeah.
But in Annie Hall, he talks about, it's like Annie goes to the therapist once, she cries, she basically fixed.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going 3 days a week for the last 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. And he still needs help, right? Exactly. Well, I've had all kinds of different. Do you know Phil Stutz of him, The Tools?
I don't think I do.
He's
No.
the character they based the shrink on, the Harrison Ford shrink in Shrinking.
Yeah. Shrinking. Yeah.
That's Phil Stutz.
Okay.
I went to him for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the Hollywood shrink guy. Very, very interesting stuff. Different. I'd highly recommend reading those books. They're
Yeah.
good. Well, let's do it, Mike.
Let's do it
We're
because
so
we
excited to have
got
you on, Michael. We're really great. Yeah, we know Nicole. She was like raving about you. So
Wait, who was that? What'd you
Nicole
say?
Bradford.
Oh, Nicole. Yeah.
yeah.
That's very nice of her.
Yeah. All right, do
That's
I go, Mike? You want me to go? You got a hard stop.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay.
Well, hello, fellow humans and eavesdropping bots. I'm Chris Nolan.
And I'm Mike Schindler, your trusted guides on this wild ride that's happening in the planet, on the planet, in the universe, where humanness might just actually be our greatest untapped superpower.
Yep. And on the Rise of Humanness, we explore what it means to be human in an increasingly automated, uncertain world.
And I just got to say, you got to go ahead and share this, tell a friend, or better yet, tell a favorite neural net bot. Tell somebody about this episode that's going
Tell
on.
anybody. We're not picky.
I
If you don't know.
We're never
subscribe,
picky.
hit that subscribe button. So today's a big episode. We're joined by none other than Dr. Michael Platt, a neuroscientist, a behavioral genius, and quite possibly the man who can explain why your boss still doesn't get you.
I got to tell you, Dr. Platt, he's got such an amazing bio, guys, and this is why we're so excited to have you guys listen into this. But he's the director of Wharton Neuroscience Initiatives and the James S. I got to get this right. How do you say this? Is it REAP, right?
Reapy.
Reapy. Okay, so the James S. Reapy University professor at the University of Pennsylvania. So he sits at the intersection of business, brain science, and behavior.
That's right. Basically, if Ted Lasso had a PhD and could back it up with lab data, that's Michael here. So he's here to answer what exactly are brain-based skills and how will you use them in this AI-powered future? what does neuroscience tell us about the power of empathy and storytelling and trust, and how we can have the rise of humanness in this AI age.
Yeah, and I think that's so cool, Chris. And I think, so if people are willing, or if they're really wondering, how to become more adaptive or emotionally intelligent leader, this episode is essentially your backstage pass to the human mind. And that's why we're so excited about
All
this.
right. So welcome, Michael.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, let's just get right to it.
Let's get to it, Chris.
Let's do it. Okay. So we know we've got these Stone Age brains, these 1.0 brains, we call it, in these exponential times. So we have these neurons, and which are terrific, our prefrontal cortex, all this amazing stuff that we have from eons of evolution that we've forged around campfires. But now we're into this code world. So Michael, how do we rewire our Stone Age interfaces, our hardware, to thrive in this exponential world, this AI saturated world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and there's a lot of talk about rewiring. I think you've got the wiring you're stuck with. Okay, so we're all born, I don't want to say pre-wired, but we're kind of pre-wired. And it's not only brain 1.0, it's more like brain like 0.10. So, it's not just a Stone Age brain, but it's a brain that goes back probably 60 million years. Ours is a lot bigger, and we happen to have a language module. But beyond that, a lot of the circuitry, the networks that are in our brains that support the very human qualities of social connection, empathy, being able to read somebody else's mind, not exactly, but perspective taking, thinking outside the box, being creative, curiosity, all that stuff is part of the package we inherited from our long dead primate ancestors. We've amplified those things, right?
Yeah.
But they're still there. They're still there. You can't really fight them. You're born with this Swiss Army knife in your head, right? So you come pre-equipped with tools, and those tools are designed to do specific jobs. Okay, so you might have a knife, and you've got a nail file. The most important one's the corkscrew from my perspective. Okay.
That's great.
And it's like, we inherited those, okay? And in each person, one of those might be a little sharper, a little duller, and we can make them better through use, right? And through some other things that we can do. And they can get worse or duller through disuse. Now, I don't want to overlook the fact that, yeah, hey, we do have some capabilities to acquire external tools, right? That allow us to do other things, whether that's a rake, or a car that you can drive. And those things seem to get incorporated into that Swiss Army knife that's in there anyway.
Yeah.
Mike
actually has a beer can opener.
I've got so many questions on this. I'm going to be walking around now looking at people like, I wonder what Swiss Army knife that guy has in his head. So Dr. Platt, you talk about the leader's brain, like the second edition of the leader's brain. I mean, you tackle AI head on. And I think people are kind of freaking out a little bit about AI. Is it going to replace me? Absolutely. I'm not going to need my Swiss Army knife, to your point, anymore. I'm going to be plugging in to this AI thing. So if you could install like the neural firmware updates in every manager, or every person across the planet tomorrow, or harness AI wisely, what would it be? I mean, how do we train it, or how do we untrain old programming?
Yeah, this is a super good question. I think let's kind of go back to basics in a sense.
Yeah.
So we're finding ourselves, you brought it up, like everybody's stressed out. You're freaking out.
Yeah.
What, there's going to be like 2 people running the planet. I once had this conversation. How many brains are we actually going to need to run like the United States at some point? I don't know, maybe just a few. And AIs and robots are going to do the rest of things. I don't know what the rest of us actually do at that point, but that's causing a lot of fear, a lot of consternation. People are worried, they're freaking out. In some cases, I know people who are like, they're training AI systems to take the jobs of themselves, which is a really difficult.
It's just crazy.
That's just crazy. It's like, I'm doing my own annihilation. It's
yeah, I'm extincting myself. Oh, well done.
It's a good thing to bring up this week too, with the colossal extinction of.
Well, what? I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm working on my 6-pack abs because I think there's.
So you hit on a very important point. So when I said go back to basics, I think what we have to do is preserve our brain health and optimize our brain health. That's the starting point for dealing with stress, for being adaptable, for being resilient. So how do we make sure that our brains are functioning the best they can, right? That they're wired up and they're ready to go every day when you go to work, or even if you are at home and you got AI out of a job. So what are the key things? What are the hacks you can do? Well, the first thing is physical exercise.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to get out, you got to work out. That does a couple of things for you, right? It increases blood flow to the brain, right, which is super important. And it reduces stress. And when it's reducing stress, it reduces inflammation. So inflammation is the killer of your brain. That's what causes kind of degeneration that we see in almost every kind of neurological disorder that we acquire as we age. So physical exercise is super important for helping with that. I mean, meditation serves some similar purposes, but through a different route. But by reducing stress, we help to make our brains more youthful. And we know that younger brains are more adaptable brains. They are more flexible brains. They are more creative brains, just kind of on average. So physical activity. The second would be social activity, connection. So we are wired. This is our superpower as a species. I believe that's the secret sauce of humanity, is that we are wired to connect with each other. That allows us to do things that, no other species can do. So we can have this conversation over technology. We can build airplanes. We can build AI, right? But that wiring for connection is become a necessity for life. And without it, we fall apart. And we're seeing that over the last couple of decades, and in particular, over the last 4 or 5 years, especially during the pandemic. So we know that if you are lonely, if you lack connections, not only social connections, not only does this make you less resilient, but you're mentally unhealthier, right? So you have prone to anxiety, depression, and on and on and on. And you are also physically less healthy. So we know that being lonely is associated with, it's like smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of its impact on your quality of life and how long you actually live. So physical activity, social activity, and the third would be cognitive activity. So actually get out and use your brain. I think there's a danger here, there are many dangers with AI, but if you just use it to kind of just take the load off, right? And you don't actually keep your brain humming along and functioning, you don't challenge it in any way, then that's also, not healthy for our brains. We know that people who use their brains more extensively, they're more cognitively flexible, they read more, they write with greater fluency when they're young, and they're less likely to get dementia when they're old. So I think that those are the 3 prerequisites, just out of the gate to handling this situation.
That's great. Reading. Remember that, Mike?
I read, I'm an avid reader, so I'm pretty safe
read,
here. And Chris challenges me every day, Michael. So
you got it.
Yeah. Well, the thing I got about 10 questions here, but I'll just see if I can sum it up into one, as I always do my piggyback questions.
Yeah.
But so what's interesting about this, and I agree with you, there's like an epidemic of loneliness out there.
Yeah.
So curiously, Mike and I are building a companion app. So let's talk about that area, because taking the load off, so to speak. Yeah. So the thing that's interesting, I think, about companion apps is there are 2 different aspects of it. One, they do take the load off because you're talking to them and then making you feel better. Then they're also making you feel social, less lonely, right? The other part of it is they're synthetic. So it's not really human. So you've got all this great stuff. Mike, he's got this, like the Pinocchio effect, which I love, which you touch your nose and touch somebody else's nose, and you can feel them. It's kind of like prefrontal cortex can feel things.
Yeah.
You don't get that obviously with the synthetic stuff.
That's right.
But it still has its values. So I guess this is called, wrap this into this artificial intelligence quotient we're talking about. Yeah. So put that soup together I've just given you as far as so it does take a load off. It does probably help you with some neuroplasticity, but at the same time, but you're still missing the real connection.
The real human connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, right, it will be a real human connection. So it's all
Yeah.
about fidelity with which it actually replicates a real human being. So if you've got an AI that at this point, AI's test with flying colors,
Yeah.
people pick out an AI as being more human than an actual human, which
Ooh,
is really remarkable.
it understands me better.
Totally, totally. But right, it has infinite patience. It has the stored compassion and empathy of everything that's ever kind of been written, right? And everything that's ever been produced. So in principle, it can be a much better friend, a much better therapist, right? A much better doctor or physician than your average person who's actually doing those things. So I think what's going to be really fascinating is when those AIs, those chatbots, those companions get put into physical, they're actually realized in a physical
Yeah, robots,
body, a robot, but a robot that actually has all of the properties of a
facial. Yeah.
and at that point, then, yeah, what's the difference? It kind of doesn't
Oh, interesting.
matter, you know what I mean? And so, I
Yeah.
mean, neuroscience is pretty interesting in this regard because our work and other people's work, and working with crude AI, not the chatbots that we've got here, but actually, it's kind of the standard in social neuroscience and has been for 20 years that to kind of understand what social processing is in the brain, you have somebody lying in an MRI machine, and so you can't fit another person in there unless you're really, close to that person. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know of one or two studies that were done to examine that physical closeness, which you can't do that in the US. You can do that in like Sweden, or in
Oh,
Scandinavia.
really? Oh, that's great.
People, yeah, anyway, coupling. So the standard is to compare your interaction with a screen, avatars on a screen.
Hmm.
It's basically the same engine behind it, whether it's a real human being or an AI, but it's all about the belief of the person whose brain is being scanned. So you tell them, okay, now you're playing with a human. You're going to be deciding how much money you're going to split between you or playing some other kind of game. Oh, and now you're told, oh, this is a computer that you're playing with. And then you look at the difference there. And even when the back end is exactly the same, there's actually a big difference in the brain. So a lot of it has to do with belief, right?
Interesting.
Like, I believe you are a human, then my brain responds to you as if there's essentially no difference. And I think that what we're seeing, and the chatbots are quite amazing at this point, is that their fluency in human language is so great.
Yeah.
So I think that we are prone to think of, I mean, I do. I already talked to my computer before there were chatbots, you
Yeah.
can't, and we anthropomorphize. I mean, that's another feature of, we talked about being wired for human connection. That's why we see, a man in the moon or a chimp skull on Mars or Jesus's face in an oil stain in the driveway.
Yeah.
We're constantly looking for that, right? And we'll take any clue. And so when you are chatting back and forth with one of these things, it's just very natural for the brain to engage with it as if it were a human being on the other end of that.
That's so fascinating. Chris, it reminds me of that, yeah, obviously the movie Her, right? Where he develops that connection. And that TV show out of, what was it, England or Europe or whatever, remember, where they looked human. Remember there was this class.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that was called. It was called Humans or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean,
the robot. That's
yeah.
what
So
Michael's talking about.
if we're really evolving that way, there's a couple of things I want to build off too, because you said something, the three areas that people really need focus. And so what I hear you saying is people need to be more disciplined in the age of AI. So they've got to actually move out of an unconscious state into a conscious state and really say, listen, if I'm going to compete, I need to be more intentional about my relationships. I need to be more intentional about my mental state, doing crossword puzzles, whatever. And I need to really work on my physical being. That said, looking at the data in the United States, we know that's not happening. So are we going to be extinct, Michael? I mean, what's going to happen?
I don't think we're going to be extinct, but we might not be the best version of ourselves. And I think that's, what like if we take a look at the arc of technology to where we've gotten, you can think of this as taking several steps of crude AI along the way.
Yeah.
Right? Where we first got these magical computers in our pockets. And then social media was really the first very primitive but extremely powerful AI, which hijacks the reinforcement learning system in our heads. That's the dopamine-driven habit formation system that, that drugs act on, social rewards act on. And, that social media is so good at just ranking up. And that's why we can't, it's very hard to be intentional then in that situation, because it's maximizing, it's designed. The incentives are to maximize time on screen, time with that social media. This is what we call now, I think in AI, it's like responsible AI or accountable AI, ethical AI. What's the incentive structure that's going to be behind this? I think, for example, the companion that you are building, if it's actually designed to help people,
right,
then you can be very mindful of that in the design, so that in addition to having a helpful relationship, it doesn't become a bad relationship where the individual's codependent, so to speak, where they're addicted to the chatbot, because then they're not getting out and having real social interactions. They're not getting out and having physical activity or doing other kinds of things to stimulate themselves mentally and cognitively. So I think as you build that in there, say, hey, there's the chatbot could say, hey, there's a company picnic or whatever on Saturday, make sure you go, or something like that, to just get out and do that.
Well, that'd be interesting, Chris. Think about this. You just gave me a great idea. I mean, think about if the companion actually said, wait a second, did you actually exercise yesterday morning?
I think it should.
And if you said no, it'd be like you're cut off until you finish exercise.
Getting back to two areas, the dopamine thing. So exactly. So you brought that up, which is, I think, very important to where people are with the instant gratification of where the instant gratification world we live in. Our app is really based on a reward circuitry, but a reward circuitry that takes you from that 0.10 to 1.0 to 2.0. And we have this thing in our program, which are, you would call them maybe 10 superpowers that you don't have. One of them is, and we didn't really get into this from I don't know what you're feeling, it's kind of a crazy question. The intuitive part, the collaboration part of the prefrontal cortex, when you're saying you can relate to somebody when your nose grows, you're kind of saying that the brain has an ability to kind of feel its space, like to feel a team and to feel, like, I know when people go into conferences, some people, or even in front of groups, they get panicky. Is that because our brains are kind of taking in that energy or something? What would you call it?
Well, it's not energy. Oh, well, I'm going to back that up or back away from that. In a moment, I'll tell you about something that does feel a little bit like black magic or, craft or something. But, we do have this, we'll go back to social brain network. So it's specialized for managing our moment-to-moment interactions with other people and also our long-term relationships with them. So anytime you walk into a room, it just gets activated, it lights up, and it starts to figure out, okay, there's people there. Who are they? Do I know them? Do I not know them? How many are there? What are they feeling? What's the general mood of the room? Can I read it? What do they want? What are they looking for? What's going to happen next? Because your brain is a prediction engine. It's trying to figure out what the next is going to be so that you know how to act appropriately. So that's kind of what happens. And I think whether you become anxious or not, right, is a function of other things that are going on in your brain. Like, are you generally
all those old beliefs and biases?
Old beliefs, but also, like, are you used to a low level of social interaction or a high level? Like this, we saw this happen during the pandemic. So our brains, the other thing about our brains is that because they're kind of limited, I mean, believe it or not, you got 86 billion neurons, 100 trillion connections, and there are limitations. Okay, it's actually not unlimited in what it can do. And so our brains have evolved to be extremely efficient. So they do this thing called efficient coding to not waste any energy. So how does your brain do that? It signals contrast. It signals the difference from the background, either what's around you or what you just experienced. Okay, and so if you haven't had a lot of social input, then the background is down here, your baseline. Now you walk into that crowded room and it's like, oh my God, there's a million people.
Oh, wow.
maybe there's 5 people and it feels like a million people, and it's too much, right? And your brain would have to have a long period of kind of
Exposure.
exposure, that's right, to raise its kind of level. Like now, the pandemic, it was the other way around at the beginning. Like suddenly you went from normal level of social interaction and activity to suddenly none or very little. And that gap also caused a lot of mental strife for people. And it took a while to adapt to that. So, the issue that I know we're getting a little off topic, but it's like the issue.
No, we like to go wild and into rabbit holes. Let's do it.
But this is actually a cool part, because as we've seen, like return to office, quote unquote mandates, but a lot of call, even though it's 5 years later, and people are kind of freaking out about it. And some of that has to do with, they don't want to commute, and it's, they have to put clothes on and all that stuff. Can't pet their pet or their dog or cat.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's the social anxiety, right? And that's because they've gotten used to this lower level of interaction. And the problem is, it's like, just as long as it took you to adapt to being alone or being isolated, it's going to take your brain that much time to readapt to a higher level of social interaction. The analogy, and I think it's perfect here, is like, again, we're going to go back to exercise, fitness. If you take the winter off from running because you don't like running in the cold, and I've done this many times, and you're going to start up again, let's say in April, and you're out of shape, and it's misery, right? You can barely make it a block or two. But if you just stop, you'll never get back in shape. So you kind of have to suffer through it. And with the belief, with the understanding that your brain's going to adapt to this new level of social stimulation, and eventually it'll all feel good and it'll feel all right. I do want to go back to that the comment you made about feeling the room. And in some ways, and in many ways, what happens when we're with other people is when we really connect, is that they're kind of an extension of your own brain. They're pulled into your own brain. So what happens is and it's actually in a survey of this called the inclusion of the other in the self. And it's got these circles, and it's like, it's with regard to a certain person. It's like either one is you and one is the other person. They're really far apart, closer, and actually they overlap. And when you really have a strong relationship with somebody, the parts of your brain that respond to reward and punishment and pain and pleasure for self respond exactly the same for pain and pleasure for a loved one, for somebody that you're strongly connected with. That kind of mirroring is the basis of empathy and understanding. So,
is that mirror neurons doing that?
Well, mirror neurons are part of that, but think of it this way. There's more. When people think about mirror neurons, it's like the way they were first described, which is actually in monkeys before it was ever human. Okay, you see the monkey, you hand a piece of food, the monkey reaches out for the hand, that food, and you see the activity of these neurons. And also when you reach out and do that, but not when a robot reaches out and does that, or some other kind of object. Right. The idea was it was supposed to reflect intention, and that is kind of a basis for empathy. Like, what is somebody else trying to do? What do they want to do? Now, we've discovered other kinds of mirror neurons. These were all in monkeys. And so mirror neurons for reward, like we just talked about. So neuron that responds when I get a reward myself, but also when my friend gets a reward and when I give him a reward. And the same thing for pain. Also for attention. So mirror neurons that respond when I turn and look that way, but also when my friend turns and looks that way. Because what that does is when we connect like that, then we start to synchronize our behavior and synchronize our internal
process. That's that team synchrony stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I was heading with this, which is this amazing, kind of mind-blowing phenomenon, which is that when you really feel like you're in sync with somebody, you really click. Literally, your brains are synchronized.
That's your great story about the ice hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a great story. You know the story, right, Mike?
I don't know this story.
On ice. Oh, go through that, Michael. It's a great story.
On ice. So I don't know if I assume you guys were alive in 1980. I don't know.
Well, I'm only 46.
That was one of the greatest stories ever, by the way. 1980. I know where it was, Lake Placid. Yeah, so is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, you got it. You got it. Yeah, I was 13, so very, very dialed into it. It's the Winter Olympics. And so at that time, the Olympics was meant to be played by, amateur athletes, right? So, and we respected that. We, meaning the United States, respected that. So typically the athletes would come from college teams. But at that time, that it's just kind of like Rocky IV, Rocky versus Ivan Drago.
Good analogy.
The Soviet Union at that time had a real sports machine, and their Olympic athletes were essentially professionals. So their hockey team was the best on the planet. They had all the best equipment, the best training. They played together. They were supported by the state. So they were widely favored to take the gold medal. And so then, you had the Olympics are coming up, and the U.S. Olympic Committee is going to be like, oh God, we got to put together a team. What are we going to do? Right. And so they hire this guy, Herb Brooks, right? Who's legendary. And he was interesting because he knew psychology, right? And so and this was a really key insight. He said, well, I might not be able to field a team with the best hockey players on it, but I might be able to but put on the ice a better team. And a better team could outcompete a team of better players. That was the insight. And so then what he did is he goes out and he's got to recruit all these guys. It's men's hockey. And so he gets all these recruits from all these college teams. He gets Boston College and he gets Minnesota, I think, because they were the best teams at that time. So he tries to focus on them. And then he gives them all Myers-Briggs test. He gives them a personality test, basically, to try to get insights into the likelihood that they would be coachable and that they would work well with each other, right? And so he used that as part of his selection process. And then he really worked on team dynamics, right? So he was like, that was the big deal. He made himself like the evil, evil overlord, so that they were together against him. That's another feature, unfortunately, of like team dynamics. Usually there has to be
the villain. It's the story. Exactly. It's a villain.
So the upshot is, okay, they go out, they beat the Soviet Union, they go on to win the gold medal. It's a really beautiful story. And so what we've all been searching for, at least in science, I think, but also in sports, in business too, is like, what's that secret sauce of team chemistry? Can we do a better job than throwing a personality test at people, which is survey-based and is prone to all sorts of errors and bias? And yeah, I do believe we found it, which is this physiological or neurological synchrony. So it's a biological marker of how well aligned people are cognitively and emotionally. So what happens is, you guys, I can see it between you two, like, you got your banter,
synchrony.
That like, basically when you guys get together and you start talking and where that, you have a feeling where that's going, the pattern activity, in Chris's brain starts to resemble the pattern activity in Mike's brain, or vice versa. And what that means is you're starting to see things similarly, you're feeling similarly, right? You make similar decisions, and also leads to coordinated behavior. So, and what's cool about when your brains synchronize, it percolates down to your body as well. So your hearts begin to beat together, even if you have different respiration.
Heartbeats same rate.
Your breathing, your movements. And the cool thing is you can run it in reverse. So if you, and this is what's really cool, because we're now out there validating all these so-called team building activities. And it turns out, if you do things like do the mirroring game, which is used to as a warm-up in improv theater, that entrains your brains together. And so you start to synchronize your brains. If you drum, the hippies in the park who are playing drums together, they're synchronizing their brains. That's why they're down there, because it's like, it feels good. It ends up making you feel good. Singing, chanting, conversations are really powerful way. But basically any rhythmic activity that you can do with other people is a way to get your brains in sync. And I think that's why, speaking as an anthropologist, that's why every culture on the planet has these activities. They have dancing, singing, etc., drumming, because that is the ancient glue that keeps societies together. That even though you have selfish interests, that this glue, and we don't know exactly how it does it, But this glue allows us to kind of put our self-interests, second and act together as one. And what's amazing is this is not uniquely human. So, talking about that ancient,
Yeah.
so we see it in monkeys, you see it in mice, even you see it in bats, social bats, birds, et cetera. So it seems to be this is one thing nature does, is when nature solves a problem, it doesn't try to find a different solution if it encounters the same problem again. So it seems to be like this fundamental adaptation for collective action, for cooperation. And in fact, the higher that physiological synchrony is, the higher brain synchrony is, the greater the trust, the higher the teamwork and collaboration, the better the relationship. Actually, even between a therapist and a patient is much better. Between a parent and a child, you can predict whose marriage is going to last.
That's what Gottman did, right? He probably looked at at a university.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, Chris and I are pretty good on synchronization.
I just want to, Mike, I'll tell you why. Keep that thought. But Mike and I are such sync, Michael, that every time you mention monkey, Mike and I hear the theme from White Lotus.
That's so true. We do. Every time you say monkey. And that's so true, Chris, because when he said monkey, I almost did that. I almost went,
yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And we do synchronize our wine drinking, Michael. I mean, we're pretty good at that. So
that's our activity.
I know I want to go back to something you said. You said something about the black mirror or the black magic, something.
Okay. This relates to synchrony. So we know synchrony starts in the social brain network. So it begins even with the simple, like just making eye contact with somebody. Your brain starts to synchronize. And then as you do things together, that synchrony can increase. That raises a really important question, which is like, how does my brain know what wavelength your brain is on? Like, how does my brain see into your brain? Now, we assume that there are outward clues and manifestations. Obviously, if you're moving together, that's observable, right? So that makes it very, very obvious. But if you're not, how does that happen? We don't know. We assume they're kind of outward, like just tiny little clues, like pupil dilation, subtly shifting and starting to synchronize together that we're totally unaware of. But we do know this is causal and this study that needs to be replicated, but is a study that was done in mice, actually. It was super cool. So basically what they did is they took like 3 mice and you implant a stimulator into a part of the medial prefrontal cortex that's involved in social interaction, so like empathy type behaviors. And this is the cool part. So they're going to deliver, this is very controlled, going to deliver 100 pulses, say, of stimulation to each of the mice. So its overall activity is not different. But say you take 2 of the mice and they're going to be stimulated precisely in time with each other, in sync, and the other one out of sync. And the 2 mice that are stimulated synchronously come over to each other and they start grooming and cuddling and they're all being very social. And the other mouse is like, wandering around and he's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But so how was that detected by their brains, right? I mean, I don't know of I'm a scientist, I'm a materialist. I have to believe that there's some way. Right? There has to be some way, but that's where the black magic kind of witchcraft, I don't know. Is it? I'm not going to say.
Or you could say it's even the God factor, maybe, right? I mean, you could take the other side of that, right?
So, yes. I mean, I have had many conversations with people that seems like the obvious.
Yeah.
Or there's some kind of energy, right? Chris brought that up earlier, some kind of energy. Or if we go down to the really fundamental physics, right? If this is all strings underneath, they're somehow vibrating together. I don't know.
Yeah.
Physics is not my specialty, but so far it's eluded us in terms of what that mechanism might be.
Is that what people call like a different vibration when people operate on a different vibration? Like you get around some people and the energy is like really strong, and then you get around others and you're like, man, we just operate at a different level.
Oh, it's a great way of describing it.
Yeah.
We have not measured that, but
interesting.
I strongly suspect that it's something, I don't know. I mean, something.
Well, you can certainly feel negativity in people.
Absolutely. Now, maybe it's just that we're not conscious, we're not aware of what the clues are that are actually physical manifestations on
Those
them.
are our bummer neurons in our head.
Yeah, exactly. They're just
He's
detecting
a
that
bummer.
there's something about them. Now, the weird part of this, it goes even deeper than that. I mean, you said when you walk into a room and you're like, yeah, I'm not,
Yeah,
that
not interested.
the vibe is wrong. This is what we call homophily, which is like you like people who are like you. And this even happens at the genetic level, so that the people that you end up becoming friends with are more alike. You guys are more alike in terms of your DNA. So it's like,
That's scary.
so
Yeah.
it's not like
Don't go there, Michael. No.
you're not like more related to each other.
No, good.
It's nothing like that. It's just that you share more DNA, and that must confer upon you similar likes, similar interests, similar ways of behaving, the vibe you give off. And that's why you connect with, you're drawn to some people and not toward others. In fact, this brain synchrony business can, before you meet somebody, can predict whether you're going to become friends with them later. So it's a slightly different version of brain synchrony, but basically you can measure a person's brain activity while they're watching a bunch of TikTok videos. And you do that for different people, so same videos, and then you line up the brain data, and the ones that are more resonant, that actually respond the most similarly, end up becoming friends later.
That's wild. Well, let's maybe, what if there's a way that we take the AI world now and we put the synchrony together with it? Obviously, so like you deal with leadership and teams and all that. So they're trying to introduce AI to all the teams and leaders. So it's becoming another entity in the team.
Yeah.
So is there something to this, to neuroscience and how you introduce it? Because it's having problems really being integrated.
Yeah.
Now. People don't quite know. They do it on a personal level, and some do more, some do less. But as an overall level of getting to the point where these companions will be, like you said, like one of us or an entity that we deal with, how does this synchrony work with that? Like, in other words, we had, who was the guy that we had on from Arizona State? Great, he's a neuro guy.
Oh, Jamie.
Jamie
Jamie.
Gorman, right.
Yeah.
Dealing with robots, DARPA, robots, AI, teams, seeing how you relate. How does this synchrony get introduced to leadership? In other words, guys, you got to get on the page with how the brain works.
Well, I'm doing my best. So,
nothing against you. What are you doing, Michael? Get out there.
But it is a real point, which is that because I've been essentially platformed at Wharton, #1 MBA program in the world, we have a lot of visibility. And so I get in front of business leaders multiple times a week. And this is the thing that I talk about.
Right.
And it's basically about how do you create a culture? How do you support people and teams so that they're the most productive, the most innovative, most resilient, and especially now as we're bringing AI on as a teammate, as a co-pilot, right? And I do believe there's something to this idea of synchrony. Now, I don't know if it's going to go down to the level of like transistors, resonating with human brains. I don't know. Those are two very different physical, like they're made of different stuff, right? So that might be a barrier, but at least in the pattern of outward behaviors of the AI, like the words that they use and the cadence with which they respond, like are they long responses, short responses, if that can be tuned to the individual or the team so that it is most aligned with them, right? Then I think that those brains are going to be more receptive toward including the AI in the team, if you will, and that will also preserve the synchrony amongst the physical, the real human beings who are on that team. I think that is what the objective.
Yeah.
It starts.
People are already doing it though. I mean, like if you're an employee and you're using AI a lot, and they're becoming very good at being companions or confidants or whatever, you're saying, my boss is doing this, and I need to have a meeting coming up. And, how do I work with this and this and this? And it'll say something, or I just went in and I wanted a raise. He didn't give me a raise. How do I talk to him now? So you've got your manager, your leader, and you've got this competing mentor on the side.
Right. Well, I think that's not only something you need to tolerate, but you need to celebrate. And I think that being transparent about the fact that you're doing it yourself too, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to upskill. We're all going to elevate our game by incorporating this, essentially super intelligence that also has, super empathy and apparently super good, social and linguistic skills.
This is so fascinating. Yeah. You said something. I can't get it out of my brain right now because you said AI is, people adapting and you can kind of see how people synchronize. Do you think, well, I'm just going to flat out ask it. Will AI pick marriage partners? Will AI be a better decision maker for people who choose to get married?
You mean in the marriage itself or picking?
Correct. No, like, can it predict, like, okay, this person and this person, great marriage?
Yeah, no, I believe so. Absolutely. In fact, a couple of ex-MBA students and I started a company a couple of years ago to actually do just that. Unfortunately, they got super busy with their own, day jobs, and so we didn't quite follow that through. But I think absolutely. I mean, move over Yenta. This is, they're really gonna, I think in many ways, this will be highly desirable, right? In the sense that AIs will be much better decision makers than human beings. They'll have access to all this information. They can process it super fast. They're not burdened by information overload, by the tyranny of choice, like where there are too many like there's so many frailties in the way that we make decisions. We have all these biases. All those things are just built into our Stone Age brains, and it's basically almost impossible to escape except by being super intentional about what you're doing in any situation. So yeah, well, yeah, I think so. I think
that's our app, Mike. That's exactly the thing we have, is that to get over all those Stone Age things and have an AI companion that can kind of take you from, we go from 1.0 to 10.0 and how to get rid of all that unconscious stuff. And Mike, you've got to
we got a hard stop on this podcast. So I actually want to defer to you, Chris, and give you the last question.
I want to end on the wildest thing. Yeah. We got through like half our questions, but we could do 3 more.
No, we went down rabbit holes, but.
So what's the wildest experiment that you've done or you've heard about or whatever to determine what AI is doing to our humanness or how we're going to, with the future? And maybe let's make it positive. I was going to say good or bad, but something positive.
Literally walking over here to do this podcast, and I was reading on LinkedIn, and Ethan Mollick, who's a colleague here at Wharton,
I love Ethan Mollick.
So super expert on, evaluating different AIs, et cetera. And so he pointed to a paper, it's a working paper coming out of Harvard Kennedy School. But I thought it was like, wow, this actually validates everything that I put in the book about, like, that to be a better leader in the age of AI, you need to be a better human. And that's exactly what they found, which was that they measured how, basically an individual's EQ, emotional intelligence, their IQ in the sense of cognitive flexibility and other things, and how kind of innovative and creative they were when interacting with an AI chatbot. So they were as if the chatbots were like, took the place of a human team. They could measure that really concretely. And then they measure that when these same people were dealing with a randomly assigned team of human beings. And what they found is exactly what I just said, which is that, like, better humans did better in both situations. Having high EQ made you a good manager of people, made you a good manager of AI. High, cognitive flexibility, same thing. And those individuals, those leaders who pulled that all together are the ones who performed absolutely the best in either situation. So, what that tells me, like, in terms of positive things, sure, we're all wired, we have these tools in our Swiss Army knives in our heads. But like I said at the beginning, you can sharpen them, right? And the most effective way to sharpen them is through use. And the social brain network, the source of your EQ, is the one that I have in all of our work and other work that I've seen, is the one that's most malleable. So literally, the more you use it, the more you tune it up. So even going out and having a conversation with the barista at Starbucks is getting on the treadmill for the social brain network. So you're giving a little bit of a workout. And then there are other things you can do, like actually really trying to vividly imagine what's going on in somebody's head, like doing essentially perspective taking exercises. That's like high intensity interval training for your social brain network. So you can upskill that thing, which means you're going to get better, not only with people, but better with AI.
Wow, that is so cool. This is so great.
Well, listen, I also want to say, Mike, before you wrap up,
Yeah.
I'd love to, I'll reach out to Ethan too. I'd love to have him on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention
he would
talk
be
to you.
great.
And
Yeah. He would be great.
he's great.
Dr. Platt, how do people follow you? Like, where's the best way to follow the work that you're doing, the innovative stuff that you got, the incredible knowledge that you have?
So I'm predominantly on 2 socials. So LinkedIn and X. And yeah, I mean, I'm posting there all things brain, business, human, right? And animal too, because that's a good part of who we are. So those are the places they can follow me. People are super interested. They can email me. I actually, believe it or not, I respond to all my emails. And
yes, you do.
I love to talk to people.
Yeah.
And The Leader's Brain, check it out. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming out this fall. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That is
Well, Mike, as always, if you want to stay ahead of the bots, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because in the age of AI, that's still a human function. So
Yeah, it totally is.
an active skill.
Share the episode. And like we say, I mean, not only do you need to rise, but you got to be creative. You got to be human, right, Chris? What else do
You got
we
to stay
say?
curious. You got to stay
Yeah.
human and keep rising.
That's right.
Till next time, everybody.
Yep. Till next time.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Bye-bye. And for those listening, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, share, and remember, the future awaits for no one, but it does send reminders like this podcast.
I love that. Well, guys, until next time, be adaptable.
And stay human. Bye-bye, everybody.
The rise of humanness in the age of AI. It's a podcast with Chris and Mike. The rise of humanness in the age of AI. Stay curious, stay human, let's rise.